He called an alien woman gorgeous. What she did next was unbelievable. The starship horizon cut through the dark like a silver needle, threading the vast fabric of the universe. Space wasn't silent, not really. The ship hummed with life, engines pulsing like a heartbeat. While distant pulsars murmured across the void, Jack Mercer leaned against the corridor wall, nursing a cup of something. That was technically labeled coffee, though it tasted more like warm battery acid. The Terran Exploration Corps wasn't known for its luxury beverages. He stared out the narrow viewport at the purple swirl of a nearby nebula. It was beautiful, sure, but he was getting tired of beautiful. Every sector they passed through had another gorgeous, deadly anomaly or a breathtaking planet full of things that wanted to eat him. It was hard to appreciate the scenery when the scenery kept trying to kill you. Commander Mercer, came a smooth, lilting voice behind him. Jack turned. Suppressing a sigh, Lyra, the Alari ambassador, stood there radiating poise and elegance. She looked almost human, almost. Her skin was paler with an opal-scent sheen that caught the light, and her ears were long and gracefully pointed like some ancient elven queen from a fantasy novel. Her eyes, though those were the kicker, they shimmered, changing colors with her mood. Right now, they hovered between deep blue and a hint of green, like the ocean before a storm. Ambassador, he greeted, then immediately regretted how formal he sounded. Lyra wasn't exactly cold, but she wasn't easy to read either. She spoke like someone who measured every word twice before letting it leave her mouth. I would like to review the next planet on our route, she said, voice even. Your pilot mentioned a gas giant with moon suitable for resource extraction. My people will want details. Jack smirked. Yeah, Davis described it as big, round, and super gassy. I'm sure the council will love that analysis. Lyra blinked her head, tilting slightly in that way she did when she wasn't sure if he was joking or just an idiot. A thorough report would be appreciated. Jack took a sip of his questionable coffee and grimaced. Sure thing. Anything else? She hesitated. He noticed it, a rare crack in her polished composure. Is there a reason you avoid speaking to me outside of mission briefings? She asked, her voice quieter. Now Jack blinked, caught off guard. Avoid? You know I'm not avoiding you. I'm just giving you space, professional distance. You're an ambassador and I'm well not. Her eyes shifted, swirling into a faint silver hue. He didn't know what that meant, but it didn't look encouraging. I am here to understand humans, Lyra said carefully, not to be placed at a distance from them. Jack wasn't sure what to say to that. He wasn't great with feelings, his or anyone else's, and Lyra seemed to have feelings tucked away behind a reinforced diplomatic firewall, so naturally he defaulted to sarcasm. Well, if you wanted to understand humans, ambassador, you're on the wrong ship. We're not exactly the best of the species. He waved a hand vaguely. We're more like the awkward, disappointing cousins no one invites to holidays. Lyra blinked again, then, to his surprise, the corner of her mouth twitched upward. Not quite a smile, but close. I find that unlikely, she said softly. Jack chuckled despite himself. Yeah, well, give it time. They stood there in an almost comfortable silence. For a moment, Jack glanced at her, wondering how someone could look so alien and yet familiar. He didn't know much about the Alari, but Lyra was different from most diplomats he'd met. She wasn't condescending or aloof, just distant in a way that felt more like habit than intention. Before he could think too hard about it, the intercom crackled to life. Commander Mercer, please report to the bridge. Davis tried to argue with the navigation AI again, and now it's quoting philosophy at him. Jack sighed. Of course it is. He glanced at Lyra, who raised a delicate brow. Your crew appears unconventional. Yeah, that's a nice word for it, Jack said with a grin. Unconventional. Let's go with that. As they walked to the bridge, Jack felt the tension in his shoulders ease a little. Maybe Lyra wasn't as impossible to talk to as he thought. When they stepped onto the bridge, Davis was mid-air with the ship's AI. Alfred, I'm just saying you can't calculate fuel efficiency based on theoretical metaphysics. Davis was gesturing wildly at the interface. That's Like planning dinner based on an existential crisis, the AI's voice smooth, and just a little smug responded calmly. The nature of existence affects all things including travel velocity, you. Assume the universe is static. It is not, therefore your argument is flawed, Jack. Pinched the bridge of his nose, Alfred, stop. Bullying the pilot, I am not bullying, I am enlightening your. Enlightening him into an aneurysm, Jack muttered, then looked at Davis. Just reset. The calculations manually, Davis threw up his hands. Oh sure, I'll just eyeball it. Like some ancient sea captain maybe. I'll use the stars while I'm at it, Jack shot. Him a look. If you start wearing a tricorn hat, I'm transferring you to waste management. Lyra watched the exchange, her head tilted again. Is this normal, she asked Jack quietly. He sighed. Pretty much. Welcome to humanity. She was quiet for a moment, then to his surprise, her lips curved into a small, genuine smile. I think I am beginning to understand. Jack stared at her for a beat longer than he should have. She really was beautiful, in a way that felt unfair. To the rest of the universe, the words slipped out before he could stop them. You look beautiful today, Lyra. Her smile froze. Her eyes widened, swirling from silver to bright, startled gold. For the first time since she came aboard, she looked genuinely, utterly speechless. Then, without a word, she turned and practically fled the bridge. Jack blinked after her. What did I say? Davis snorted. Smooth, Commander, real smooth. Jack groaned. I'm going to regret that, aren't I? Probability suggests yes, the AI chimed in helpfully. Jack slumped into his chair. Fantastic. The air in the mess hall felt heavier than usual, or maybe that was just Jack's imagination. He poked at his plate of something that claimed to be protein stew, but had the consistency of old engine grease. Across from him, Davis was thoroughly enjoying his sandwich, which Jack suspected was made from the same questionable material, but cleverly disguised with extra condiments. So, any sign of Lyra yet? Jack asked, not even trying to sound casual. Davis grinned, crumb sticking to his chin. Oh, she's around. Saw her earlier, actually. Jack perked up despite himself. Yeah, what did she say? Davis leaned back in his chair with an exaggerated sigh. Well, first, she said good morning, and then she didn't flee in terror, so I'd call that progress. Jack groaned, dropping his head into his hands. Great, I'm the guy who made an alien diplomat too uncomfortable to stay in the same room as me. That's probably a new record for humanity. Don't sell yourself short, Commander. I'm sure someone else out there offended an alien species faster, probably by sneezing on them or something. Davis paused still, though you basically proposed. Not bad for a first date. Jack shot him a look. It wasn't a date. Davis shrugged, didn't stop you from popping the question before Jack could respond. The mess hall door hissed open. Lyra walked in her steps, measured and composed as always, but her eyes flicked toward Jack, then away just as quickly. Her expression, unreadable, the swirling silver of her irises, had deepened to a muted gray. He didn't know what that meant, but it didn't seem good. Commander Mercer, she said, voice polite but distant. I need to speak with you privately. Davis coughed into his sandwich, barely suppressing a laugh. Jack shot him a glare. Before rising to follow her out into the corridor, she led him to a quieter part of the ship, near the observation deck, where the vast expanse of space spread out before them. The stars drifted by lazily distant suns, painting soft trails of light across the viewport. Lyra stood in silence for a moment, her hands clasped behind her back. Lyra, listen. Jack started awkwardly. About what I said, she cut him off, her voice steady. Do you understand what those words mean? In a Lari culture, Jack hesitated, sort of. I got the lifelong bond part from Ortega after you well ran off. He rubbed the back of his neck. I didn't know. I wasn't trying to. I mean, it was just a compliment, a human thing. Lyra turned to him, her eyes narrowing slightly. Among my people, such words are sacred. To call someone beautiful, it is more than admiration. It is a declaration, a promise. It is not said lightly. Jack swallowed hard. Yeah, I figured that out. Look, I didn't mean to put you in a weird spot. I wasn't trying to declare anything. He paused, wincing, though I guess it's a little late for for that she studied him for a long moment, and Jack felt like a bug. Under a microscope, humans are strange, she said at last, her voice quieter now. You speak without considering the weight of your words. You feel first, and think later. Jack huffed a laugh. Yeah, that sounds about right. He glanced at her. Is that why you avoided me all day? Thought I was trying to what claim you, or something. Lyra's gaze flickered to him. Something like amusement tugging at the corner of her mouth. It was more complicated than that. Jack tilted his head. Complicated how she hesitated, then spoke slowly, as if choosing each word with care. I am an ambassador. I was chosen for my ability to remain impartial, to observe and understand. But you confuse me. Humans confuse me. Jack raised an eyebrow. Well, we are an acquired taste. Lyra actually smiled, a small fleeting thing, but it was there. Jack felt an odd warmth in his chest, like he just stumbled onto a rare and precious artifact before he could say anything else. The ship jolted violently, alarms blaring to life. The lights flickered, and Jack instinctively grabbed the railing. Bridge report. He barked into his calm. Davis's voice came through strained. We've got company commander, unidentified vessel just dropped out of warp. They're hailing us, and they've got guns. Jack muttered a curse under his breath. On my way. He glanced at Lyra. Looks like the Hardoheart's going to have to wait. Her expression hardened. Diplomat's mass sliding back into place. Then let's deal with this interruption. They reached the bridge to find Davis frantically rerouting power to shields, while Ortega monitored the approaching vessel on the view screen. A jagged, rust-cold ship loomed, looking more like a scrap heap, held together by spite and bad decisions. The calm crackled, and a voice rasped through the speakers. This is Captain Vorgath of the Blackthorn. Surrender your cargo, and no one gets hurt. Jack exhaled slowly. Pirates, great, because today wasn't complicated enough. Davis glanced back. So what's the plan, Commander? Diplomacy, or explosions? Jack exchanged a look with Lyra. Her gaze was steady, unwavering. Let's start with diplomacy, Jack said, and keep explosions as a backup. Lyra nodded. Agreed, though with pirates, the distinction is often thin. Jack chuckled. Despite the situation, welcome to humanity. Lyra actually laughed, a quiet, melodic sound that, for a moment, made Jack forget the looming threat entirely. Let's hope we survive long enough for me to finish understanding it, she said dryly. Jack grinned, settling into his command chair. Stick with me, Ambassador. I'll show you all the ways we mess things up. The pirate ship loomed closer. Jack's smile didn't fade after all. He added with a smirk, we're unconventional. The pirate ship loomed on the view screen like a rusted predator, all jagged edges and bad intentions. It looked less like a vessel and more like someone had fed an asteroid into a blender, then slapped engines on the biggest chunk that survived. Jack leaned back in his chair, one boot propped against the console, projecting a confidence he absolutely did not feel. All right, he said, cracking his knuckles. Let's talk to Captain Scrapheap. Davis glanced over. You sure you don't want to open with explosions? I feel like they're more our speed. Let's save the fireworks for later. Jack replied, maybe we get lucky. And they're the friendly sort of space pirates. Ortega snorted from her station. Yeah, maybe they just want to sell us cookies. Jack grinned. Pirate scouts of the Andromeda sector. I hear the thin mints are to die for. The comm crackled again. This is Captain Vorgath. Surrender your cargo. Last chance. Jack tapped the console and leaned forward. This is Commander Jack Mercer of the starship Horizon. Hi there, Captain Vorgath. I'd love to chat about cargo, but I seem to have misplaced our manifest. Maybe we could skip ahead to the part where you tell us what you actually want. There was a pause. Then the voice returned, low and growling. All of it. Jack blinked. All of it? That's not a very specific number. Weapons, fuel, supplies. And the Lyra stiffened beside him, her voice ice cold. I am not cargo, see. That's where we agree, Jack said smoothly. Ambassador, Lyra isn't part of any deal, and I hate to break it to you, but our weapons are more stubborn than our pilot. Davis raised a hand. Hey. Compliment, Jack added without missing a beat. There was a longer pause on the other end, now the kind that made Jack's skin itch. He glanced at Lyra. She was watching the screen, her expression unreadable, but her eyes had shifted to a deep molten gold. He didn't know what that meant, but he was pretty sure it wasn't happy they're charging weapons. Ortega said quietly. Jack sighed. All right, so much for diplomacy. Davis whooped. Explosion time. The first blast rocked the ship hard enough to throw Jack from his chair. He hit the deck with an undignified grunt. Shields holding. Ortega shouted over the alarms. Barely return fire. Jack barked. Hauling himself upright, Davis slammed the controls with more enthusiasm than precision. The horizon spat bright lances of energy back at the pirate ship, scoring deep burns across its hull. The pirate vessel twisted to avoid the worst of it, but it moved with the grace of a drunk space whale. Direct hit on their port engines. Davis crowed. There. Listing, let's make sure they stay that way. Jack said. Target their weapons next. Before Davis could fire again, the ship jolted violently. A new alarm howled. Different from the others, Jack didn't like the sound of it. It had the kind of urgent, wailing tone that screamed, "You are going to explode very soon." What now? Jack demanded. Ortega's fingers flew over the console. They launched a boarding pod. It latched on to Deck 6. Jack swore under his breath, "They're coming in." He turned to Lyra. "Stay here, the bridge is secure." Lyra's expression didn't so much as flicker. "I am coming with you." Jack opened his mouth to argue, but one look at her face, her eyes now burning like molten amber, told him it would be a waste of air. "Fine," he said, "but stay behind me." They moved fast, racing down the corridors as the ship groaned and shuddered under more pirate fire. Jack's boots echoed against the metal floor, his pulse hammering in his ears. Davis caught up, breathless, but grinning like this was the best day of his life. "You think these guys know who they're messing with? Considering they're still shooting at us, I'm going to say no." Jack muttered. They reached Deck 6 just as the boarding hatch hissed open. A rush of smoke and steam billowed out, and through it emerged the pirates, hulking figures in mismatched armor, bristling with weapons and bad attitudes. The leader was a mountain of a being, half cybernetics, half scar tissue. His one organic eye glared at them, while the other a glowing red implant. Word and clicked. His voice came out in a metallic snarl. "Give us the." Jack stepped forward, raising his sidearms. "See, the thing is, I've grown kind of attached to her." He glanced back at Lyra. "No offense." Lyra's voice was cool as a winter moon. "None taken." The pirate leader's mechanical eye focused on her. "She's worth more than your ship, more than your crew." "Step aside, human." Jack tilted his head. "Yeah, that's going to be a no for me." The pirate's mechanical arm twitched. Jack saw the shot coming a split second before it fired. He dove to the side, the plasma bolt searing past him so close. He felt the heat brush his cheek. Everything exploded into motion. Davis whooped again, because of course he did, and fired wildly into the group of pirates. Ortega's voice crackled over the comming for reinforcements. Jack took down the first pirate with a clean shot to the leg, sending the brute sprawling. Lyra didn't stay behind him. She moved like liquid moonlight, faster than Jack thought possible. One pirate lunged at her, and she ducked under his swing, twisting gracefully before slamming an elbow into his throat. With a satisfying crunch, the pirate leader snarled, raising his arm to fire again, but Jack was faster this time. He shot the cybernetic limb, sending sparks and molten metal flying. The leader roared in pain and fury, staggering backward. Jack stepped forward, gun raised. "Looks like your negotiation tactic needs work." The pirate stared at him, breathing hard. Then, without a word, he slammed a fist into his wrist console. A second later, he and the remaining pirates shimmered and vanished in a flash of light. Teleporters. Davis muttered, "Cowards." Jack lowered his gun. His heart was still hammering. He turned to Lyra, who was watching him with those molten eyes. "Well," he said, breathless but grinning, "welcome to humanity." Lyra exhaled slowly, then to his surprise, she smiled, a real one this time, small but warm. "I think I'm beginning to like it." The lights flickered overhead as the hum of the ship's systems struggled to reassert themselves after the pirates' abrupt departure. The air smelled like burnt circuitry and ozone, the usual Perfume of we almost died. Jack took a shaky breath, trying to decide whether to laugh or collapse. He settled for an exhausted grin. Well, he said, voice still a little breathless, I think. That went great. Davis leaning against the wall and inspecting a new scorch mark on his sleeve snorted, yeah, if your definition of great includes almost getting vaporized by space criminals. Details. Jack waved a hand dismissively. Nobody got vaporized, and the pirates left empty-handed. I call that a win. Lyra tilted her head, her long ears flicking ever so slightly. Jack was starting to recognize it as her version of a raised eyebrow. They teleported away. That is not the same as leaving willingly. Jack sighed. Yeah, I was kind of hopping. You wouldn't point that out. He straightened up, brushing off his uniform. All right. Let's assess the damage. Davis, check the weapons array. Ortega, figure out if we're still on the pirates' Christmas card list. And Lyra, he glanced at her, not entirely sure what to assign her, considering she just elbowed a guy's throat into early retirement. She beat him to it. I will assist. Ortega, your ship systems are inefficiently organized. Ortega raised a brow. Wow, harsh. Jack chuckled. Welcome to the horizon, where everything's held together by duct tape. Hope and Davis's questionable repair skills. Hey, Davis called from down the corridor. I only use duct tape when the other tape runs out. Lyra looked between them, her head tilting again in that fascinated, puzzled way. Jack was beginning to think she wasn't entirely sure if they were all brilliant or completely insane. Maybe both. They split up, leaving Jack to make his way back to the bridge. The ship groaned underfoot, metal plates shifting as if the horizon herself was grumbling about the fight. He gave the bulkhead a gentle pat on his way past. Hang in there, girl, he muttered. We'll get you fixed up. The bridge was quieter now, the chaos ebbing into that strange, hollow stillness that always followed a near disaster. Jack dropped into his chair and let his head fall back with a sigh. He barely had time to appreciate the moment of peace before Davis strolled in, holding what looked suspiciously like a protein bar. Weapons are mostly intact, he reported, unwrapping the snack with one hand. Portides got some carbon scoring, but nothing we can't patch up. He took a bite and chewed thoughtfully. We are, however, almost out of coffee. Jack sat bolt upright. What? Davis nodded grimly. No, it's a dark day for humanity. Jack groaned, slumping back in his chair. Great, we fought off pirates just to die of caffeine. Withdrawal. The door hissed open again, and Lyra entered, Ortega trailing behind her. Lyra's hair was slightly out of place, a rare sign of anything less than perfect composure. Your ship's calm relays are a tangled mess, she announced, as though this were a neutral observation rather than a scathing review. It's impressive that it hasn't spontaneously caught fire. Jack raised a hand in our defense. It only caught fire that one time. Ortega shook her head, smirking. I managed to boost our sensor range, but Lyra's right, the wiring back there looks like someone let a toddler design a spaghetti recipe. I wasn't the one who routed the long-range scanner through the food synthesizer. Davis piped up, still chewing. That was before my time. Jack exhaled, slowly pinching the bridge of his nose. So what you're saying is we're held together by duct tape, hope, and poorly designed spaghetti. Essentially, Lyra said, her voice completely deadpan. Jack blinked at her, then laughed, a surprised, genuine sound. He wasn't sure what was funnier, the joke itself, or the fact that Lyra was starting to make them. Lyra watched him for a moment, her expression softening. For a second, Jack could almost believe this wasn't a diplomatic mission, that they weren't light years from home, with pirates on their tail. It felt normal, like they were just people on a ship figuring things out as they went. That moment shattered when the console lit up with a high-pitched beep. Ortega lunged for the controls. We've got a problem. Her voice lost all trace of humor. The pirate ship's back. Jack stared at her. What? They jumped to light speed. Looks like they doubled back, Ortega said grimly. They're coming in fast, and they're not alone. 2 more ships just dropped out of warp with them. Jack's stomach sank. Oh, fantastic, they brought friends. The comm crackled, and that familiar growl filled the room again. Commander Mercer, Captain Vorgez's voice dripped with barely contained fury. You made a mistake. Jack leaned forward, his tone. All mocked cheer, yeah. I get that a lot, you'll have to be more specific, you. Should have surrendered the Ari. Jack glanced at Lyra. Her face was calm, but her eyes burned again, not gold this time, but a cold, glimmering silver. He didn't know what that meant yet, but he was pretty sure it wasn't. Let's negotiate. She's not yours to take, Jack said firmly. There was a low chuckle on the other end of the line, a sound that made Jack's skin crawl. She will be Vorgeth promised one way or another. The calm cut off, leaving nothing but the quiet hum of the ship and the distant echo of alarms. Jack exhaled, slowly turning to his crew. All right, he said, voice steady despite the adrenaline pounding in his veins. Looks like diplomacy is officially off the table. Davis grinned, already moving toward the weapons console. Explosion time. Jack nodded. Explosion time. The pirate ships hung in the void like a pack of hungry wolves, their jagged hulls barely visible against the distant haze of a nebula, the largest one Vorgeth's flagship, bristled with gun ports and thruster scars, the kind of ship that didn't bother pretending it had ever been anything but trouble. Jack sat on the edge of his chair, feeling the tension coiled tight in his chest. He hated standoffs. They were like bad poker games where everyone had too many guns and not enough cards. All right, he muttered, cracking his neck. 3 ships versus 1. I'm feeling optimistic. Define optimistic, Davis said from the weapons station, fingers hovering over the controls. Jack shrugged. I think we can probably take 2 of them before they turn us into a floating scrapyard. Davis nodded thoughtfully. So we die heroically. Good to know. Lyra stepped closer to the command console, her voice steady and calm in that way that somehow made Jack feel a little braver. Surrender is not an option. Jack raised a brow. Well, yeah, I figured that part out after the whole one way or another threat. Her eyes lingered on his for a second, and he couldn't quite read the expression there. Something complicated, equal parts trust, and something he wasn't ready to name yet. Ortega spoke up from the sensor station. They're charging weapons. We've got maybe 60 seconds before they start throwing fire. Jack blew out of breath. All right, let's make this count. He tapped the comm. Vorgeth, one last chance. Back off or this gets ugly. The reply came almost immediately, dripping with smug amusement. It's already ugly, Commander. You just haven't realized it yet. Jack leaned back in his chair. He's not wrong. I look terrible today, Commander, Lyra said patiently. Now is perhaps not the time for self-deprecation. He grinned despite himself. It's never not the time for self-deprecation. The first blast rocked the ship hard enough to rattle his teeth. Red warning lights flared to life across the bridge. Shields holding, Ortega shouted. For now. Davis whooped, slamming the controls, returning fire. The horizon spat a streak of plasma at the nearest pirate ship, catching it dead center. The ship bucked sideways, its shields flaring blue. Jack grinned. Nice shot. Yeah, I'm awesome. Davis didn't even pretend to be modest. The second pirate ship swooped in from above, laser strafing the home metal. Screamed, and the ship lurched dangerously. Jack grabbed onto his chair to avoid an unscheduled flight into the ceiling. Ortega evasive maneuvers. I'm trying, but the ship's flying like a drunken asteroid. Ortega snapped, yanking the controls hard to port. Hey, drunken asteroids are very misunderstood. Jack shot back. Another blast hit, and a console behind them exploded in a shower of sparks. Davis flinched, coughing through the smoke. That wasn't important, right? Only if you like, having engines. Ortega's voice was tight. We've lost 20% thrust power. Jack swore under his breath. This wasn't sustainable. They were fast, but they weren't fast enough to outrun 3 ships, and they definitely weren't tough enough to win a slugfest. We need a new plan, he said, forcing his mind to work through the adrenaline pounding in his head. Davis, you're a tactical genius. Davis blinked. I am. You are now. Jack pointed at him. Think of something. Davis stared blankly for a second, then brightened. All right, what if we pretend to surrender, then hit them with everything we've got when they drop their guard? Jack considered it. Risky, Lyra spoke quietly. They would not lower their guard, Vorkthis too. Cautious for that. Right, Jack said, plus I hate pretending to surrender. Makes me feel all gross inside. Another blast rocked the ship. Ortega let out a frustrated growl. We're running out of ship to argue on. Jack was about to snap back when Lyra stepped forward, her voice low and measured. I have an idea. Jack blinked at her. I'm all ears. He hesitated, then glanced at her long, tapered ones. Okay, maybe not all ears, but you get what I mean. Her lips twitched in the faintest smile. If we can lure them into the nebula, their sensors will be disrupted. They will lose visibility, and their targeting systems will falter. Davis frowned. Yeah, but so will ours. Lyra's eyes gleamed silver again. Jack still didn't know what that meant, but it made his skin tingle. I do not need sensors. For a second, the bridge went quiet. Jack stared at her. You're serious? I am a Larry, she said simply. Our kind navigated the stars long before machines. Did the nebula will blind them? It will not blind me. Jack studied her for a moment longer, then nodded slowly. All right. Ortega plot a course straight into the nebula. Ortega hesitated. We might not come back out. Jack smiled grimly. Then let's make sure they don't either. The horizon banked hard, engines sputtering, but still pushing them forward. The swirling purple mist of the nebula loomed ahead, vast and ominous. Jack could almost hear the pirates laughing behind them, thinking they were running scared. They had no idea. As the ship plunged into the haze, the stars vanished, leaving only a swirling ethereal twilight. The pirate ships followed, their silhouettes barely visible in the mist. Lyra. Jack glanced at her. You sure you can do this? She didn't look at him. Her eyes were closed, her face serene. Trust me, he did, and for reasons he couldn't fully explain that scared him more than the pirates ever did. The nebula swallowed them whole. The swirling clouds of purple and blue fog pressed against the ship like a living thing, static crackling over the hull, and little flickers of ghost light. The stars were gone, swallowed by the mist, and even the pirate ships pursuing them became little more than distant smudges of silhouette. Jack leaned forward in his chair, squinting at the viewport. Like that might help. It didn't. So this is cozy. Reminds me of that time I got stuck in a janitor's closet with Davis after a bad poker game. Hey, Davis protested from the weapons console. That was your fault. You're the one who said you could out-cheat a Vickery. I could have, Jack said defensively, if he hadn't had 4 extra eyes. He glanced at Lyra. What's the plan? We keep flying blind and hope they trip over us. Lyra didn't answer immediately. She stood near the center of the bridge, her posture perfectly still. Her eyes were half-lidded, the silver sheen brighter now, like moonlight had been poured into her irises. Her ears twitched faintly, and for the first time Jack realized she wasn't just focusing, she was listening. They are spreading out, she said softly, voice distant, trying to box us in. Jack blinked. Wait, you can hear them? I can feel their engines. Lyra murmured. The vibrations, their heat signatures, they burn hot and clumsy. Great, Davis said. We're being chased by angry space rhinos. Jack smirked. I feel like that's an insult to rhinos. Lyra ignored them both. They're adjusting formation. The lead ship, Vorgath, is holding back. He waits for us to panic. Her head tilted slightly. The others push forward sloppier. They expect us to break first. Jack leaned back in his chair, folding his arms. Then let's disappoint them. Ortega, cut our engines, go dark. Ortega blinked seriously. Jack nodded. We're in a nebula. We're already blind. Might as well make them blind too. Let them stumble around while we stay quiet. Ortega hesitated a moment longer, then flicked the controls. The hum of the ship's engines died, replaced by an eerie silence. The lights dimmed, leaving only the faint glow of emergency panels, and Lyra's strange, silvered eyes. The ship drifted weightless, and still Jack could feel his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. Davis spoke, his voice low. So, what happens if they bump into us? Jack didn't look away from the viewport. Hope they hit us with the soft part of their ship. The bridge fell into a tense, quiet. Minutes passed, or maybe it was only seconds. Time felt strange, stretched thin in the mist. Then Lyra's voice cut Through the hush quiet, but certain their clothes how close Jack asked her. Head tilted again the one, on the left 20 maybe. Less Jack swallowed hard he. Didn't dare move like even the sound of his breathing might give them away. Davis leaned, in whispering for no good reason. Okay, but hear me out, what if we just start screaming like really loud freak? Them out, Jack snorted despite himself. Yeah, maybe they'll think we're space ghosts. Lyra spoke again, still calm. The ship on the right is further away, it's looping back. The third ship is above us. Too high to see clearly, Jack exhaled. Slowly, all right, we wait another beat of silence then. A deep, distant thrum reverberated through the ship low and resonant like a giant heartbeat. Ortega frowned. What was that? Lyra's eyes flicked open sharp and focused there. Using pulse sweeps energy waves to flush us out, Jack groaned. Of course, they are. Can we counter it? Ortega winced. Not really, we're a freighter, not a stealth ship. If they get close enough, we'll light up like a parade float. Jack rubbed his face. Fantastic. Any other bad news? Well, Davis offered. I'm out of snacks. Not helping. Another pulse wave rolled through, stronger this time. The ship vibrated under the force, metal groaning faintly. Jack gritted his teeth. All right, he said, enough hiding. Ortega, fire up the engines, full burn straight ahead. Let's make some noise. Ortega blinked. Wait, what? You heard me, Jack said, voice steady. We're not going to win a quiet game. Let's make this messy for a second. Nobody moved. Then Ortega grinned. I like messy. The ship roared back to life. Engines flaring bright against the swirling, missed the horizon, shot forward, cutting a blazing path through the nebula. The pirate ships reacted immediately, sensors locking on red blips. Lit up the display, converging fast. They're coming. Ortega shouted. Good, Jack said Davis. Ready weapons. Let's remind them who they're chasing. The nearest ship surged after them, lasers slicing through the mist. The first shot missed. The second grazed their port side, sending sparks flaring through the cabin. Minor damage, Ortega called. Still flying. Jack grinned. Let's make him regret that. Davis whooped, slamming the fire controls. Plasma bolts spat from their cannons, slamming into the pirate ship's shields. It wobbled, engines sputtering. Direct hit, Davis yelled. The second ship came in fast, flanking from the right. Lyra's voice cut through the chaos sharp and steady. 30 degrees starboard now. Jack didn't even hesitate. Ortega, do it. The ship banked hard, just in time to avoid a blast that would have sheared off their engines. The pirate ship overshot, its lasers flaring wide into the mist. Jack laughed breathlessly. Nice call, Lyra. She didn't answer immediately. Her eyes were distant again, that strange silver glow flickering brighter. When she spoke, her voice was lower, almost a whisper. Vorges's moving. Jack's grin faded. He leaned forward where her eyes snapped open, focused and fierce. He's coming straight for us, the horizon screamed. Through the nebula, engines blazing, a bright comet in a sea of mist and shadow. Jack's knuckles were white on the armrests, his mind racing faster than the ship itself. The sensor grid flickered, struggling to keep up with the chaos outside, but he didn't need it to know what was coming. He could feel it in his bones. Vorgeth was close, too close. Ortega, give me more speed, Jack barked. We're already pushing 110%. Ortega snapped back. The ships held together by hope and duct tape. Right now, Jack grinned despite the adrenaline pounding through him. Then let's hope the duct tape holds a little longer. Davis laughed from the weapons console, though it was more nerves than humor. If we survive this, I'm buying the duct tape. A drink. Lyra stood steady in the middle of the bridge, her silver eyes glowing like twin moons. She wasn't watching the controls or the viewport. She didn't need to. She was listening, sensing, guiding. Her ears twitched faintly, tracking vibrations. Jack couldn't even perceive. He's closing fast, she said softly. He's coming from below. Jack blinked. Below? How the hell does a battleship sneak up from below? Lyra didn't answer. Her gaze flicked to him, and for the first time, he saw something in her expression that wasn't calm or focused. It was worry. He's not sneaking, she said quietly. He's diving straight up at us. Jack swore under his breath. Ortega, vertical climb. Now the ship groaned in protest as Ortega yanked the controls, pitching them upward into a near vertical ascent. The engines screamed metal plating rattling so hard. Jack was half sure the whole thing was about to fall apart. A shadow erupted from the mist beneath them, a jagged silhouette that looked more like a serrated blade than a ship. Vorga's flagship, colossal and monstrous, shot passed beneath them, missing by meters. It vanished back into the fog as fast as it appeared. Davis let out a shaky breath. Okay, that was too close, can we all agree? We hate space pirates like universally. Jack laughed, breathless. I'm voting, yes. Lyra didn't laugh, her voice came low and urgent. He's looping back. Jack's grin faded. He stared at the viewport, heart pounding. All right, time to stop running. Davis blinked. Wait, what? You heard me. Jack stood, his voice steady. We're not outrunning him, we're not out shooting him, but maybe we outsmart him. Ortega twisted in his chair. Jack, that's a battleship. We're a freighter with a personality problem. Jack's grin returned, sharp and lopsided. Yeah, but we've got something he doesn't. He glanced at Lyra. We've got her. Lyra tilted her head. Me, you said you can feel their engines, their movements. You're the only one who can see through this soup. We can't win a fight, but we can make him miss her. Silver eyes widened slightly. You want me to guide you? Blind fire, exactly. Jack's voice dropped lower, quieter. I trust you. Something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe even something softer beneath it. She nodded, once her voice steady again. I will guide you. Jack dropped back into his chair. All right, team, let's make this bastard dizzy. The ship spun into motion. Lyra's voice cutting through the noise, precise and calm. Left up 10 degrees now, bank hard now. Ortega obeyed without hesitation, yanking the controls. The horizon twisted like a snake spiraling through the mist as Vorga's flagship roared after them. Plasma blasts streak through the fog. Missing by meters, he's trying to lock weapons. Lyra said sharply. Sharp dive now. The ship nose dived, engines screaming. Another blast cut overhead, so close. Jack felt the heat ripple through the hull. Davis whooped, I think I just saw my life flash before my eyes, and honestly it was kind of disappointing. Focus, Davis. Jack barked, though he couldn't stop the grin tugging at his lips. Lyra's voice came again, faster. Right upper now. Roll. The ship corkscrewed sideways, narrowly avoiding another barrage. Vorgath's ship thundered past again, overshooting. He's frustrated. Lyra murmured, he's chasing too hard, he's losing control. Jack's eyes narrowed. Let's make him lose more. He leaned forward. Ortega cut the engines now. Ortega blinked. That's insane. Jack grinned wider. Exactly, do it. With a muttered curse, Ortega killed the engines. The ship jerked momentum, carrying them forward. As the engines went dead silent, they drifted silent and dark, lost in the mist. Vorgath's ship roared past one final time, blind and furious. He didn't see them. Jack waited a beat longer, then tapped the comm. Hey, Vorgath. His grin widened. You missed. Davis slammed the weapons controls. The horizon fired one perfect, precise shot right into Vorga's exposed engines. The battleship erupted in a fireball, flame and debris, swallowed instantly by the nebula. The shock wave rocked the horizon, but Ortega was already on the engines, reigniting them and pulling them clear. The mist thinned. The stars reappeared. They were free. The bridge fell into stunned silence for a moment. Then Davis laughed loud and breathless. Holy crap, we actually did it. Jack exhaled, slowly leaning back in his chair. Yeah, we did. Lyra turned to him, her voice quiet. You trusted me. Jack met her eyes. Yeah, I did. He hesitated, then smiled, softer this time. You look beautiful today, by the way. Lyra blinked, her ears twitching faintly. Her silver eyes widened, and for the first time, really truly, she laughed. It was soft and melodic, and Jack decided it was his new favorite sound in the universe. You idiot, she said, smiling. Jack grinned back. Yeah, but I'm your idiot. The horizon sailed on into the endless stars, a little battered, a little broken, but alive, and maybe, just maybe, stronger than the end.